Student Trainer Program, 2014-2015.
My name is Peter Barwaltis. I go to the Humphrey Institute and I'm getting my master's in public policy.
My name is Nicole Plan and I recently graduated with a bachelor's degree in advocacy and therapeutic approaches to health.
Hello, my name is Jacob Tolon. I am a senior here at the University of Minnesota, majoring in child psychology and minoring in Chicano Latino studies.
Hi, my name is John Wilson. I'm a fifth-year student majoring in sociology.
My name is Chris. I'm a senior. I major in sociology of law, criminology, and deviance with a minor in family violence prevention.
My name is Lisa Kidder. I'm a junior and I'm studying political science.
What is your disability, and what barriers have you encountered at the University of Minnesota because of your disability?
My disability is that I'm totally blind. As a result, I have faced innumerable barriers here on campus. Majority of them have been either physical, attitudinal, or informational. For physical, I have had some difficulties navigating around campus due to changes in my routes as a result of construction. And when navigating in certain buildings, I've noticed that said buildings aren't always designed with accessibility in mind. For informational, there have been instances where I am in class and the professor would hand me in an assignment the day of class, and said assignment is in print. Thus, I've had some difficulties completing the assignment on time. For attitudinal, especially with these system-wide upgrades, I have found it to be much more difficult to navigate certain parts of MyU and other university-affiliated websites.
Between my freshman year and sophomore year in high school, I suffered a spinal cord injury while diving into a pool. I lost complete mobility in my legs and part in my hands. Barriers that I've experienced at the U of M are usually physical due to my injury. I try to take classes on the West Bank because it's easier for me to get around. On the East Bank, there's classes that are so far apart, it makes it difficult to get around, and especially during the winter where there are no tunnels to get through. Due to the loss of mobility in my hands, I have a difficult time taking notes in class, which is another physical barrier that I have experienced here at the U.
My disability is deafness. As a deaf person, I face all kinds of barriers. I'm going to be talking about attitudinal barriers and informational barriers. As far as attitudinal barriers, often I'm chatting with someone and I miss something that they say. I'll ask them to repeat themselves. Sometimes I have to ask them 2 or 3 times if I'm not understanding them. Sometimes there's background noise that interferes. Sometimes I just struggle and that person ends up being frustrated and they tell me to just forget it or drop it. So, sometimes another thing is people actually think that I'm ignoring them because I don't hear them call my name. They think maybe I'm not paying attention, and they think maybe I'm just being rude, but I'm really not. I didn't hear them. So informational barriers also happen. So where I miss out on announcements in class, and sometimes the class is in a discussion, I'll have to bring the interpreter over, and that can end up being really awkward sometimes. Sometimes I'm just walking down the hall and I see a flyer for an event that's happening that afternoon or maybe the next day, and I'm thinking, wow, I really want to go to that, but it's really hard because I have to request an interpreter. Interpreters are great and all, but it's really hard to get them last minute. You really have to plan those things well in advance to ensure access. So really, it can be a struggle to have access to last minute events, so I generally don't go to those kinds of things. I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, I think that's probably it.
I'm totally blind. One of the barriers I experience in an educational setting is getting access to course materials in alternate formats such as Braille, Word, PDF, or eText. I also experience physical and attitudinal barriers. A physical barrier I experience is when people sometimes put signs over the Braille outside of classrooms, which makes it hard to read. And an attitudinal barrier I experience is when people see me walking down a sidewalk or crossing a street, and they'll come up to me and grab me and assume I need assistance. A good way to handle the situation, if you see a person with a disability, is to ask them if they would like some assistance.
So my disability is a spinal cord injury, and what that means is I'm limited to getting around campus because I'm in a wheelchair. The barriers I encounter are more physical. It's tough to get around campus sometimes. I can adapt pretty well, but usually if there's a snowstorm or if an elevator goes out, it's pretty hard to get around campus. And the other barriers I encounter are attitudinal, where people will treat me differently, including classmates or professors, just because I'm in a wheelchair.
I'm legally blind, and I also have anxiety and depression. The most common barriers that I've experienced as a student are informational and attitudinal. Time is my biggest challenge. It takes me longer to read because of my vision impairment. Also, I'm not able to read regular size print and see what's going on in the front of the classroom. One example is when a teacher puts questions on the board for a quiz that the students are supposed to answer and turn in. I'm not able to read the questions, and also the amount of time it takes to have someone read them to me and answer them is another challenge. I also use assistive technology to access my course materials, and some of the formats that are used are not accessible by the assistive technology, and also some of the programs are not compatible with other programs. And because of my anxiety, sometimes I have difficulty processing information. When there's a lot of facts and details presented, sometimes I feel like it can be overwhelming and difficult to organize them into a way that makes sense for me. I've also experienced attitudinal barriers. I feel like it's hard for people to understand that disability falls on a continuum. For instance, when I don't use a white cane, people don't understand that I have a vision impairment. But when I tell people that I'm legally blind, they assume that I cannot see anything at all. And also, I think the assumptions people make about how disability affects somebody can be a barrier. For instance, I think it's assumed that if you post a sign about a detour during construction, that everyone would be able to navigate around that, but I am not able to see when the sidewalk is going to end ahead of me, and also how to get around with the detour based on the information that's provided.
What works well for you in the classroom as a student with a disability that you wish more instructors would do?
In the classroom, I have an interpreter and a note taker, and that works pretty well for the most part. There is a barrier that I do have in some of my classes, and that's with the videos, especially YouTube videos. A lot of teachers use the YouTube videos for class. Sometimes they can't find a DVD, or they just find the video at last minute. There's not enough time to send it to the interpreting and captioning unit to get captioned, or sometimes they just forget. A lot of videos are uploaded to the classroom, the online discussion, but really, though, a lot of those just have the automated captioning, which is basically gibberish. Sometimes I watch videos in class that have the automated captioning. Again, that's gibberish. And so I watch the interpreter and the video, which is hard to do at the same time. It's really not very accessible. It's best to have captioning that is appropriate. I would say that is a barrier that I've had in a lot of classes. Another issue is that I always sit in front so that I have access and I can see the interpreter in the videos. But often what happens is people will run into me around campus and say, hey, you were in such and such a class with me, and I have no idea who they are. It's really difficult to establish and maintain friendships and relationships. I'm not really familiar with who my classmates even are. So I would say that that's another barrier.
To help eliminate the barrier of getting access to course materials in alternate format, they can be sent to Document Conversion, which is located in the Disability Resource Center. I've experienced barriers concerning safety in labs, especially dealing with chemicals and lab equipment. So it would be helpful if the professor or fellow classmates could tell me what's on the table as far as chemicals and tell me what the lab equipment is that we'll be working with. It's helpful when professors describe diagrams, charts, and graphs. Some of the classes I've taken involve working in groups, so it's helpful when students in the group can introduce themselves. I find it helpful when professors check in with me about how a class is going and ask for feedback about what could be improved and what's working well. In general, my experience on campus has been positive, and I've found that when students, faculty, and staff are given some helpful advice on disabilities, they want to be inclusive.
Usually if professors ask me before we do a certain assignment, a group activity, or an event, that goes a long way. The way I see it, there are no stupid questions, and people are continuing to learn about disabilities. So the more questions asked, the more we learn. And I also think you remove the attitudinal barriers when you do that. As people learn more about disabilities, their attitudes will change towards it as well.
One of the things I think people can do to help decrease barriers is to be aware, increase someone's awareness, and to be open to learn about disability. I also think it's important to understand that what works for one person does not always work for another. I don't always use the same accommodations as somebody else that is legally blind, or these same accommodations as someone that has anxiety and depression. I think it's really important to be proactive in making materials accessible and being inclusive for everybody. It's very helpful to have materials available ahead of time so that if there are necessary accommodations that a student with disability need to make, then they have adequate time to do that. And also, I believe it's important to ask questions and communicate.
One thing I really like that instructors do is at first it's kind of difficult to initiate contact with the instructor and talk to them about your disability. But once you do, it's nice to have an instructor come by every once in a while during the semester and just ask how things are going, see if things are going smoothly, if you're having a hard time or something. During the semester, because that makes it a lot easier, and it shows that the instructors care about how you're getting through the semester. One thing I wish the University of Minnesota would do better is during the winter time to plow sidewalks a little more, just because it's difficult to get around, even getting from one building to the next, just because my wheels get stuck and it makes it extremely difficult.
What works well for me in the classroom is that for one, I'm a very detail-oriented person, so it helps a lot when instructors describe charts, graphs, and other visual components contained in their lectures in great detail. And this is something that I would encourage more instructors to do. Also, I've found it easier to access course content in formats other than PDF, such as Microsoft Word or a rich text format. As a result, I would encourage a lot more instructors to display their content in not just PDF, but in these other formats as well. And if there are images contained in their content, especially any documents or chapters, to have text attached or associated with the image to describe what that image is.
The end. Thanks to all of the student trainers for another great year. Special thanks to the student trainers featured in this video: Peter Weierwaltis, Nicole Plan, Jacob M. Cologne, John Wilson, Christopher Ruiz, and Lisa Kidder. Student trainers not featured in this video: Jeff Bursch, Samantha Piper, Bradley Van Bruy, and Scott Siebert. Producer of video, Chris Lumen. Songs and video: Follow Your Dreams, Akashic Records, and Corporate Fresh, Music for Your Media. Voice for John Wilson, Andrew Bullock. Disability Resource Center, Office for Equity and Diversity. Student Trainer Program, 2014-2015.